Hey everyone, I'm Michelle with Designs by JuJu, and in today's video tutorial, we are going to be making the In the Hoop Whimsical Advent Bunting. For this project, you will stitch 24 or 25, depending on your preference, little pouches that you will close using snaps or buttons. These pouches are then strung on a ribbon or string and can be filled with all kinds of little treats and trinkets for this holiday season. Each pouch measures just under 4 by 6 inches. The perfect size for a small little goodie. The pouches are made in two hoopings. The front is made in a 5 by 7 hoop and the back is stitched in a 6 by 10 hoop. There are tons of front design files included within your purchase. Not only are there 5 different character features, but there's also a piece design and a corner only design that you can use. Each design includes all 25 numbers on the corner piece, as well as one blank design, which is what I'll be stitching for you to customize in any way that you choose. Also included with your purchase is a design file for adding buttonholes if you choose. Let's get started. For the In the Hoop Whimsical Advent Bunting, you will need the following supplies: an assortment of holiday and Christmas themed fabrics, as well as applique fabrics. I'm using the Cotton Shades line from Riley Blake, as well as these adorable stripes from Riley Blake. No Show Mesh Cutaway Stabilizer. SF-101 fused to the front pocket fabric only. Embroidery thread. I prefer Floriani for all of my embroidery projects. Some type of adhesive to close the opening on your pouch. In today's tutorial, I will be using this hem tape from Heat and Bond. It's called Heat and Bond Peel and Stick Fabric Fuse. Some type of a closure for your pouch. You can either use cam snaps or you could use the buttons. Included within your download is a buttonhole stitch that allows you to stitch a button on your pouch. And finally, you will need some ribbon or trim so that you can hang your pouches on your bunting. Let's get stitching. We are over at my embroidery machine and we are ready to stitch the first hooping. Each of the pouches within the Whimsical Advent Bunting are made in 2 hoopings. So for the first hooping, we are going to be making the front pocket for our little Advent bag. And I already have my No Show Cutaway Mesh Stabilizer hooped, and I'm going to run the first stitch, which is going to be the placement line for my background fabric. I have my 5 by 7 hoop loaded and we're ready to run that first stitch. Next, I'm going to place my background fabric directly on top of those stitches, the placement stitches, making sure that all of the stitches are completely covered, and I'm going to run the tack down. I have already applied SF-101 to the back of my background fabric. This is the only piece within your little pouch that actually needs SF-101. You don't want to add too much bulk to your project, but this will help to provide some support for our satin and decorative stitches that we'll do here in a minute. All right, so I'm going to tack down this background fabric. Next, I am going to run the decorative quilting motif that is going to go all along the background fabric. For this step, I'm going to be using some white thread. You can choose any thread that you would prefer for your project. Once the quilting stitches are complete, now I am ready to do my applique work. For this pouch, I am stitching the reindeer. There are 5 character pouches total, so you have the option to stitch the Santa, the elf, the reindeer, the snowman, or the gingerbread. So as I said earlier, I am stitching the reindeer. So I am going to go ahead and do all of my applique stitches off camera. If you have never done applique work, I will have a YouTube video linked below in the description box. And there is also a PDF included within your purchase when you download your files from Designs by JuJu. So I'm going to go ahead and do my applique work, and then we'll check back in. All of my applique stitches are complete, and as you can see, I trimmed the reindeer head as you would a traditional applique, but when it comes down here to this corner block, I actually left excess fabric along the side and the bottom. This is important because when we go to make our pouch, you want to make sure that you have excess fabric that will catch, and this won't peek through when you assemble your bag later. So keep the fabric long on the side and along the bottom. All right, now I am ready to stitch my decorative stitches for my reindeer. So I'm going to do those steps off camera, and then we'll check back in to see how that looks here in just a minute. All of my applique and decorative satin stitches are complete. So the final step for the front of my pouch is to add my lining fabric. Now I am just going to be using a plain white liner for my pouch, but if you would like to use a patterned fabric, you will want to position that fabric right side facing down. Okay, so you'll want the back side to show towards you. Again, I'm just using white fabric, so both sides of my fabric are the same. But again, if you're using a fabric that has a pattern for your lining, you want the right side facing down. All right, so this final stitch is going to tack down the lining fabric right along the top. And the front pocket stitching for our pouch is complete. Now we're going to head over to the table and do a little prep work. All right, so we're over here at my work table, and I've already removed my front pocket from my hoop. So if I lift up this lining, here is going to be the front of my pocket, and again, here is the liner. So the first thing I need to do is remove all of this excess stabilizer. I'm going to use my trimmer by George to do this. I just love this tool because it allows me to position it right underneath my fabric, so it's out of the way and I can easily trim away all of this excess stabilizer. Next, I'm going to trim a little bit of my excess fabric away from the top. I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch allowance up at the top there. And then I am going to fold open my liner and my pocket. And I like to press open my seams. That just helps get it a little bit tighter. And then I'm going to use my iron, flip this, and really press this nice and tight so that that lining is pushed away and has a nice tight seam from my front pocket. So I'm going to go iron this, and then we'll continue with the next step. I've just given that seam a good press, and so now the last step for our front pocket is to trim away the excess fabric. So again, I'm going to use my ruler here, and I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch excess of border all the way around this front pocket. And here's our front pocket. So here's the front, and there's the liner. And now I'm going to set this off to the side, and we're going to head back over to the embroidery machine to make the remaining pieces of our pouch. All right, I'm back over at my embroidery machine, and I already have my 6x10 hoop loaded. For the back portion of the pocket, you will need a 6x10 hoop. And I am ready to go ahead and run the first stitch, which is going to be the placement line for my background fabric. Next, I am going to place my background fabric directly on top of the placement lines, making sure that all of the stitches are covered. You do not need to fuse SF101 to this backside fabric. Again, we don't want to add too much bulk. A little pro tip here, when you are choosing your fabric for the back of your pouch, you will want to select a fabric that is non-directional. So let me show you what this will look like on another pouch that I already made. So here's the gingerbread man that I made earlier today. And as you can see here, we are stitching this portion right here. Okay, so here's going to be the bottom, this is the top. But when you go to fold this fabric, if you have used a directional print, it will likely be either upside down on the front or on the back. So these candy canes go both directions, so that's why it was okay to use this. But keep that in mind if you are using a directional print. You want to be really cautious about that, because one part of your pouch, either the front or the back, is going to be upside down. So just choose a fabric that is non-directional for this portion and you will be good to go. All right, so again, I have my background fabric laid down, and now I'm going to stitch the tack down to secure it in place. The next stitch is the decorative quilting motif that we did on the front of our pocket. So I'm going to stitch that off camera, and then we'll check back in when that's complete. All right, the decorative quilting motif is complete. So now I'm going to remove my hoop from my machine, and we're going to go over to my work table so that I can show you how we are going to safely secure the front of the pocket to this hooping so that we can tack it down. We are over at my table, and as you can see here, I have my project still hooped. Do not remove this back part of your pocket from your hoop. We are not finished with this step yet, so keep this hooped. And then here you can see I have my front pocket that we already did on camera here just a little bit ago. So you're going to need both of these pieces for this next step. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take this front pocket, and I am going to flip it right side facing down. So make sure this liner fabric is nice and flat. That's why we gave it a good press. And I am going to line up, I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see what I'm doing here. I am going to line up these outermost stitches along the side, bottom, and other side with the side, bottom, and other side of my pocket right here. Okay, so remember, this is the back of my pocket, this is the front of my pocket. So I'm going to line up those stitches. This takes a little bit of finagling and some practice, but what I have found that works best is I take a little sewing pin here, a little sewing needle, and I am going to poke it through the bottom corner of my front pocket. Okay, see if I can get the focus. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to poke it through the bottom corner of my pocket, and then I am going to line that up and poke it through the bottom corner of this pocket. Okay, so see, it's going to help me line this up. Okay, I'm going to repeat that process on the other side. Okay, so once you have both of your bottom corners lined up, you can then do one along the side here. Okay, so I've got it pinned on my four corners here, and then I am going to place some paper medical tape along the bottom and along both sides to secure that fabric in place for stitching. Okay, so you can triple, double check all of that to make sure that those seams are lined up correctly, and you can just lift and peek. See, mine looks pretty good. So I'm going to take this over to my embroidery machine, and I'm going to run the tack down stitch that is going to tack down this front pocket to my backing. Again, just a reminder, the right side needs to be facing down, and you want this seam that has our liner and our fabric up along the top. Okay, the open seam should be along the bottom. All right, so I'm going to head over to the embroidery machine, and we'll tack down this front pocket. Next, I am going to place my lining fabric over the entire project. Again, if you are using a directional or a printed fabric for your liner, you will want the right side facing down. And we are ready to run the final stitch, which is going to tack down that lining fabric. It's also going to leave an opening over here along the side where we will be able to flip our pouch through. All right, our stitching is complete for the back of the pouch. We are over here at my work table and we are ready to go ahead and unhoop our project. Again, I am going to cut away the excess stabilizer. Next, I am going to trim away the excess fabric, and right here along the opening, I am going to actually leave some extra fabric. I'm going to cut mine at an angle in like so. And then around the remainder of the project, I'm going to leave about 1/4 inch of a border. On any of your corners where there is a 90-degree stitch like that, I like to cut those at an angle. That just makes for easier turning. Okay, then I am going to flip forward my liner fabric here. Okay, so here's my liner, my 2 white pieces. You have your top piece, your bottom piece, and then we have the fabric that was the back of the pouch and the front of the pouch. So I'm going to fold those pieces forward. I'm going to fold my liner pieces forward, and I am only going to trim the back fabric and the front pouch fabric. Leave this liner fabric long because that's what you're going to use to close your pouch here in just a little bit. Okay, so I've got it flipped out of the way and I'm just going to trim these 2 pieces of fabric. Okay, so here's my liner fabric, and you can tell you have the liner because that's where the opening is. These are the only 2 pieces you need to leave long because if you can trim away that excess over here, that takes away some of the bulk. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my pouch through the opening here along the side seam. Here's what I'm left with once I have it flipped through. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck in these liner pieces and using some type of an adhesive. You could either use some glue, or I really like this from Heat and Bond. It's called Peel and Stick Fabric Fuse Hem Tape. I'll pop up a picture of the package on the screen here, but I love this. It is so easy to use, and I just tear myself a piece of it and line it up right inside. It's super sticky, so watch out. But I line it right along the base of those stitches. And then there's a top piece that you tear away like so. And then you can just stick this together and your opening is closed. How nice is that? It's so easy, and you have no dry time, which is why I love it. And it's very quick. Okay, so now that I have my opening closed, I'm going to again flip the pocket through like so. You can start to see it's looking like a pouch. And here's what we're left with. So I just went and gave it a good press. Here's the front of our pouch, the back of our pouch. And now you have some options for how to close your pouch. So we're actually going to head back over to the embroidery machine and stitch a buttonhole for this pouch. But you can also use a cam snap, or you could stitch some Velcro, whatever you would like to do. If you choose to do a cam snap, the pouch is made exactly the same way. And as you can see, there are no buttonhole marks or X's when it's stitched the traditional way. That is done intentionally so that you can place your pocket top however you want it, whatever height you want it. But if you want to use a cam snap, you definitely can. That's what I did here on this pocket. Just follow the directions for your specific cam snap tool to do that. But right now we're going to head over to the embroidery machine and we're going to stitch the buttonhole that is included with your purchase. Remember, this step is optional. If you do not want a buttonhole for your project, you can skip this hooping completely. Or if you have a buttonhole feature on your sewing or embroidery machine, you can also do that. Or you can do the cam snap like I showed earlier. So I already have my 4x4 hoop loaded onto my machine. This will fit on a 4x4 hoop, which is great. And I have tearaway stabilizer loaded into my hoop. This is very important that you use tearaway so that we can remove all of this stabilizer once we're finished. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run the first stitch, which is going to be the placement line for my pouch. I went ahead and removed my hoop from my machine so that I could show you the next step. So here is the placement line. All right, I'm going to position it so the liner is facing down. I'm going to line up the top and sides of my pouch, and then using some paper medical tape, I'm going to tape my pouch in place. Then I'm going to take my pouch back over to my embroidery machine and stitch the final stitch, which is going to be the buttonhole. And that's it. Your buttonhole is complete. Now that we're back over at the table, I can remove my tape. And since you used tearaway stabilizer, it removes cleanly, and you can tear out your stitch and add a button. And here's what it looks like completed with a button. So again, you have the adorable little buttonhole, super easy, that we just stitched. I just hand sewed on this button, and there it is. Very cute and very easy. And if you don't have cam snaps or you like the appearance of a button, you have options. So both are super cute and both are very easy. All right, so we're gonna head back over to the embroidery machine, and I am going to show you another option for a pocket design that is included within your purchase. The final pocket that I am going to stitch with you on camera is the pieced pocket. As I said earlier, this design file that you get from Designs by JuJu is absolutely massive. There is so much included within this, and part of that is so that you can mix and match to create your own unique and fun advent calendar that's perfect for your own family. So I did want to show you how to do the pieced front because it is slightly different than the applique front that we just made. So again, I am back over at my embroidery machine. I have my 5x7 hoop loaded onto my machine with my no-show mesh cutaway stabilizer, and we are ready to get started with the stitching. The first stitch is going to be the placement line for my base fabric. The pieced pocket is stitched different than the applique pockets. So for our base fabric, we are going to place just a piece of white cotton down. You could also use a piece of muslin, whatever you have, but this is just going to be your base fabric for your applique pieces that we're going to put on here in just a minute. This base fabric does not need to have SF101 applied to it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run the tack down stitch to secure the base fabric in place. Next, I'm going to run the placement line for my first applique side fabric. Next, I'm going to place my first applique fabric directly on top of those tack down stitches. And I did apply Heat and Bond Light to give this applique fabric a little bit of extra support, since this will have a raw edge when I trim it. Once this first applique fabric is tacked down, you will want to trim it like so, and then we will repeat those same steps on the second applique fabric. Repeat these same steps for the third applique fabric. The next stitch is going to be a decorative stitch that's going to run along each of these applique pieces that we just tacked down. All right, I'm going to finish off the remaining stitches on this pocket, and then we'll check back in when it's complete. This pieced front pouch is almost complete. The final step, again, is to add our lining fabric. So I'm going to place it directly over the entire pouch. Again, if you're using a printed fabric, make sure that your print is right side facing down. Mine's just white cotton, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to run the final stitch, which is going to tack down just that top edge. And that's it. Our pieced front pocket is complete. You will add the backing the exact same way that we did earlier in the video, and that's it. You have another adorable Advent whimsical pouch. Once all of your pouches are complete, now you're ready to hang them onto your bunting. So choose a ribbon of your choice, and all you have to do is either pop open the cam snap, or if you chose a button closure, just open your button closure, lay your ribbon flat, and then close your button. And then you can hang as many or as few as you want along your bunting garland. Like so. Here are all the styles on my garland. I've just completed my whimsical Advent bunting, and you can see it turned out absolutely adorable. We discussed a variety of ways that you can customize these pouches and how fun they can be for a little one in your life. I also demonstrated 2 methods for how to close your pouch, including a cam snap or a buttonhole feature. These pouches are going to be so perfect for this holiday season. I hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. Don't forget to check the description box below for helpful links. Also, make sure to join the Designs by JuJu Blessing group for more tips, tricks, and inspiration. I know there are going to be some fabulous ways that you can utilize these adorable Advent pouches this holiday season. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Happy stitching!